Good morning. Well, once upon a time, a Bible story. There was a wonderful young man named Lazarus, and he had two sisters he lived with, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. All lived in a little home together just outside of Jerusalem in a little town called Bethany. And many times Jesus would stop by at their little home and stay there on his way to Jerusalem for one of the feasts. And so they got to be close friends. Oh, Jesus loved them, they loved Jesus, and they expected Jesus to stay there. And Jesus visited really quite often. Well, one day, young Lazarus grew very sick. And he was on the verge of death. And Martha said, oh, listen, send one of our friends over. Jesus was teaching on the other side of the Jordan River. She said, send one of our friends over to quick, come get Jesus and heal Lazarus. He's on the verge of death. And so the messenger went over there and gave the message to Jesus. And Jesus was over there with his disciples. He was healing people over there and teaching truths about the coming kingdom of God and the government, or do you want to put it in modern English? And anyway, he got the message and he said, okay, thank you. And the messenger went home and the disciples said, why didn't you go? It's your friend, you love him. Why didn't you go? Heal him. And Jesus said, because in this instance, I want God to be glorified. Well, they didn't understand. So the messenger went home with not such good news, just that Jesus will be coming. Well, they waited and waited, and they waited for 2 days. Nothing. And finally, Lazarus died. Oh, the neighbors and the two sisters, they were so upset because Lazarus really loved the Lord, was such a good friend to everybody. And now he's dead. And so they got the neighbors together and they were wrapping him in his grave clothes. And they had a family cave for their burial. And so they were wrapping him up, and then they put him on this, like a stretcher, and they put him in that cave, and they had a couple of men roll a stone over the door. I got to sneeze. You notice I'm always doing this with my nose itches in this weather. I must have an allergy or something. And they rolled the stone over the door. And then guess what? 2 days after that, 2 days, here comes Jesus down the road. Martha was the first one. She ran out and she saw him coming. She said, why? And she started to cry. Why weren't you here? She said, our brother could have lived, but he died because you weren't here. And Jesus put his arm around her and said, Lazarus is just, in God's eyes, he's just sleeping. And she said, oh, I know. And he said, he's going to rise from the dead. And she said, oh, I know he's going to rise from the dead in the last day when you come again. You've been teaching that. But he was so young. He had lots to do yet. He helped our neighbors. He helped us. And he was full of love for you. He was your best friend. Where were you? Why didn't you help Lazarus? Oh, she was going on and on. And then Mary came out, the same thing. She fell at his feet. She said, where were you? Where were you? Don't you understand what we've gone through and what Lazarus went through? And Jesus just put his hand on her and he said, yes. And he said, take me to where you have buried him. And so they did, took him over to the cave. And the whole crowd that had been around there, the ones that were their friends that loved him and everything, everybody went over to where Lazarus was buried. But everybody was confused. And Jesus said, roll a stone away from the door. But the crowd was weeping. And it says, too, that Jesus, that's the shortest verse in the Bible, Jesus wept. One verse. Because he wasn't weeping because he was late. He was weeping because he saw the compassion and the heartache in the crowd. Like, oh, what a tragedy. You're too late. He's dead. Don't we feel that way sometimes? But Jesus had compassion for him, and Jesus wept with them. He wasn't weeping because he was too late. He was weeping because he saw their emotions. He saw their heartache and their sorrows. He understood, and tears started to roll down Jesus' face when he looked at the crowd. So he said, they had rolled the stone away, and he bends down inside, and he says, Lazarus, Lazarus, come forth. Lazarus, come forth. And it was all still, and the people were in wonderment and wiping the tears from their eyes. They were wondering what? And pretty soon, out from in the darkness, here comes Lazarus trying to walk with his grave clothes on. And Jesus immediately said, start unwrapping him. And they started to unwrap Lazarus, and Lazarus is holding on to his linen cloths and everything. And he was alive as he could be. He didn't stink or anything. That's what one, Mary was so afraid. She said, but Lord, he stinks. He's been dead for 4 days. But he didn't stink at all. He was very much alive, full of vim and vigor. And so it was for the glory of God that people could see that. Do you remember Jesus raised, in one of our earlier stories, he raised another young man from the dead that was already wrapped up in grave clothes, and he brought him back to life. But this is one of the biggies that people like to, there's so many big stories that we learn about Jesus, but it's all the little in-between ones. He raised the dead many times. He healed the sick, the lame, the blind, the cripple, many times. He was a busy guy. But this was one of the big times. Everybody started praising the Lord. So I imagine he got a big hug from Lazarus too. Okay, that's the end of the story this time. Bye-bye.